Well, hello there. I'm Jenny Moylan. I'm your advisor here at Health Professions Advising, and I'm so happy to welcome you to writing additional primary essays. Our workshop today is mainly going to cover the other impactful experiences statement, but we'll have a brief word about the COVID statement. Looks like we've got a small group here today, just 5 of you, so I welcome your questions in the chat. Um, as we go along. I'll try to keep an eye on everything, and then I'll have a bevy of linked resources for you to share at the end. Yeah, so let's just dive right in. So, um, welcome. This is our agenda. I'm just going to introduce our group a little bit and then hop into the other impactful experiences. So I bet you know us here at HPA already, but we're Health Professions Advising, and we serve all UC Davis undergraduates, graduate students, and alumni. And one really special thing about us is that we can keep being your advisors even after you graduate. Our job is to help you with those applications to professional school, so we're here for you. Um, as advisors, we see you as a whole person, and we're looking for you to show your competencies to your admissions committees and help you prepare for a successful application cycle. Um, so uh, here is our office here at HPA. We're located just a little bit past the Student Health and Counseling Center on Blue Ridge Road. Here are my lovely colleagues. All of us have more or less the same training, but also we come from different backgrounds, and we have different approaches to problem solving and to advising students. So um, come meet with us. I'm sure that you'll meet someone who will be a great advisor for you. We also have some really special pro staff who are students in the current professional schools. And um, these students are just a small step ahead of where you are. So their perspective can be really valuable in helping you plot your next steps. And they're here to help. We also just could not do without our peer advisors. Such a lot of friendly faces. I hope that you'll reach out. Peer advisors do have their own advising hours, and they have great perspective on how to make choices while you're here at Davis, how to navigate the pre-health journey, how to choose classes, and so on. Yeah, like I was saying, our peer advisors are trained to talk about prerequisite courses, co-curricular experiences, like gaining that experience that complements your education. They're here to help with talking you through how to get a letter of recommendation, application timelines, and what some of your opportunities might be during a growth or gap year. Here are all of our advising services. These are sort of in order of most time bound to least, or least to most. So Express Advising, you're always welcome to just call us. In fact, like our number is a good one to call if you get jammed up on any of the other methods of meeting with us. We also have drop-in advising. So these are scheduled appointments, but you schedule them same day, so they don't book up. So if you wake up in the morning at 8 and you're thinking, I really could use some help, I could use someone to look at my personal statement or my other impactful experiences statement, this is a good place to start. And then scheduled appointments, you schedule those at HP Advising at ucdavis.edu. And that's the same place where you book for the drop-in advising, but this is a 30-minute one-on-one Zoom or phone appointment. Oop. So, is everybody seeing my screen okay? Can you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing okay? Yeah, thank you. Oh, so many thumbs ups now. I'm happy. Um, yeah, so here's what we do at HPA. We have a lot of workshops like this one to help get information out to a lot of students all at once. We're also known for our HPA and Wall Hall collab and our guest speakers from being a guest speaker for student orgs, bringing in admissions reps, bringing in panels of students or health professionals. So really great ways for you to get to know your field and who make connections. We also have programming that helps you prepare to apply or prepare for a test. We'll have interview weeks so you can practice those interviewing skills. We just had spring break road trip. Can I get a smiley from anybody that was on the road trip? I think I recognize some familiar names. And then coming up this summer, we'll have some summer boot camps. And then finally, thanks for the smile. And then finally, we have our larger events. So we're really well known for our pre-health conference. Hope you'll come this fall. And then we have things like pre-vet symposium, aspiring Black physicians conference. We have orientations in the fall. Did anybody come to an orientation when they first got to Davis? And then we go all the way as far back as high school, trying to connect with people and create a pathway to health professions. So we even hold a symposium for high schoolers. Anyway, all this to say, um, uh, we offer a lot of year-round programming, but we always want things to be individualized. So take in this workshop, but be sure to come to us at advising and ask the questions that are particular to you. So throughout the programming today, I'll be saying health professions instead of like any specific health profession. But I'm trusting you to translate that I'm actually talking to you, even though I'm talking to a big group of people. And I'll be talking about experiences generally, but I'm quite interested in your experience. And I hope you'll bring the questions that help us tailor this information to your application. So let's jump right in. The other impactful experiences statement is a short paragraph describing your disadvantaged background. It's 1,325 characters, so that means it's longer than most of the most meaningful activities that you would have added. Um, I'm guessing that most of you have already attended the Writing Your Experiences workshop with Elizabeth, but if you haven't, that one's recorded and up on our YouTube channel. The other impactful experiences section of the AMCAS application is found under biographical information. So it's right in there with like your address and your name, and it's right at the front of the application. So yeah, this will be on YouTube as well. It's right at the front of the application. And so you can think of it as something that you would like your reader to keep in mind about you as they read your application. There are many different types of disadvantage, and we'll go through how to talk about some of them. Um, but note that this question comes grouped with information regarding being medically underserved and access to federal and state assistance. Also, because it's under biographical information, it's self-reported, right? So this is your experience as you experienced it. You're the expert on you. And there's not any cross verification as there would be, for example, with your transcript. So this is what it actually looks like in the AMCAS application. I put this up because I feel like it's sort of helpful to know what AMCAS is saying itself. So I'll just pause for a moment and let you read. So the key takeaway from this slide is that context is key. That's why the other impactful experiences is right up at the front of your application because it's context that you want your reader to have in mind when they consider your application. The other impactful experiences used to be called the disadvantage statement, and a couple years ago went through a name change. I've got uh, I kind of wish I had blended these in to give you a chance to guess at the reason behind the change. But the reason behind the change was to avoid unintentionally offensive language. Many people believe that they grow through what they go through. And many people find that they have superior abilities because of what they've been through. If they've traveled a longer journey to get to the same spot, they certainly have had time to develop advantages out of a disadvantage. So it removes the word disadvantaged. So some ways that you might quantify a disadvantaged indicator would be socioeconomic status. That's a tool that medical schools can use to identify applicants who come from socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds. And it's intended to assist them in putting your application information in context as part of a holistic review. So some ways that you might quantify that would be by your parent's occupation. So, for example, if your parent was working in an executive, managerial, or professional position with less than a bachelor's degree, that would be scored as an EO1. Um, or if your parent was working a service, clerical, skilled, or unskilled labor job um, with any of the degrees, that would be scored as an EO2. So disadvantaged status can be social, economic, or educational. What do you are you thinking in your head what might be a social disadvantage? If so, you could maybe pop some of those answers into the chat. A social disadvantage would be something like being treated differently due to ethnicity, language, orientation, or religion. So for example, if you've navigated systems of that were not built for you or that were actively built to keep you out, um, that's an example of being treated differently because of your background. Um, Another example of disadvantaged status might be economic. So that would be quantified or demonstrated by receiving any form of government aid or growing up in a single parent household or with an income that's below the poverty threshold. So that would be an objective way to describe to a reader what your background was like. And then in terms of educational disadvantaged status, that would be something like overcoming a learning disability, or it could include attending a low performing public school. So if uh, those would be other objective ways that you could talk about what you've experienced. Um, so why does the AAMC ask about this and how do they use the information? The number one reason that they ask is to promote holistic review. It gives a snapshot of your lived experience and it helps contextualize, there's that key word again, other aspects of your experiences or identity. And it helps align with the school's, I'm sorry, that's a typo. It helps us align with the school's mission and the communities that they serve. Um, So, for example, the mission of UC Davis School of Medicine is to develop health professionals to work and serve the people of California. And so um, they may well be looking for people that know and understand the backgrounds of the people of California. Um, and how is it used? It can help program directors who are interested in learning more about the impactful experience that applicants have encountered or overcome. So it can be from any point in time, doesn't have to be related to the field of medicine, and it should be information that's not captured somewhere else in your application. We'll go over more specifically how this dovetails with the personal statement. And oh yeah, and it's not the same as what's in the personal statement. One concept that I was referring to earlier is the distance traveled. This is really important, and many schools include it in their application rubric. And it's a way to measure your potential based on how far you've come and how hard you've worked to get where you are. Um, if everyone arrived at the point of being a competitive applicant for a professional school, some students, some applicants may have traveled further to get to the same point. So the key to distance traveled is being able to compare then and now, because that helps your professional schools estimate what it will be like now to the future. If you've developed drive, determination, grit, persistence, that what you've the distance you've traveled up to this point is a good uh, guess at the persistence that you would bring to your professional school. Um, and when you this distance travel concept is not used to penalize applicants when entered appropriately. So we'll talk about your writing style, making sure that you're in a comfortable zone for tone and content, etc. Any questions about distance traveled before I move on? So here are some ways that you could quantify distance traveled. Like I was saying before, parental education level, participation in public assistance programs, family income level, whether you spent your childhood in an underserved area, uh, perhaps you've been working and contributing to family income. If you received financial need-based scholarships for college, and whether you received the fee waiver for your professional school application. These are all ways that you could point specifically at um, scalable information. So, like I was saying earlier, and like I showed you, it says on the AMCAS application, you need to consider whether this question applies to you. Um, so not all medical schools do not expect all applicants to answer yes to this question. And providing an essay to answer this question is totally optional. Some applicants may not have experiences that are relevant to this question. And then at the same time, other applicants might have experiences that are relevant but not feel comfortable sharing them. So if any of that applies to you, then that's fine. That you can decide for yourself whether this is a question that you want to answer. All right, so let's compare to the personal statement. Um, if what you've grown through and your distance traveled is core to your personal or professional goals, weave that into other parts of your application. If it's important contextual information, but it's not central to your professional goals, you might want to emphasize other information in your personal statement or other parts of the main AMCAS application while still answering the question. All right, let's get in now to tackling the writing. So, um, if you are a writer and you're sitting down to get some ideas on paper, the first thing I want you to focus on is that admissions officers need to feel confident that you're currently in a situation where you'll be able to succeed in professional school. So if you're talking about something that you've been through or something that you have has impacted you in the past, you want to let them know that whatever that is, you found the resource, or if it was a health incident, you're in treatment for whatever concerned you, or you've healed from what you went through. Um, Whatever was the challenge, you want to let them know that you have a plan to succeed in professional school in the context of that challenge. So, what might you write about? You might write about your work or activities. You might um, in the disadvantage statement, you're going to write about the how. Oh, I see. So, if you're thinking about breaking the application into pieces, the what of what you've done is contained in the activities section or the experiences section. And if you want to explain to your admissions committee your big why, that you explain in the personal statement. And then if you're trying to explain to your admissions committee the how of what you did, um, you'll tackle that in the other impactful experiences statement. So how were you able to overcome your disadvantaged status? Or how do you cope with the ongoing struggles? All right, moving on to tackling the content. Um, these are some of the guidelines that I want you to consider. So first, let's consider the level of detail. It's important to tell a complete story. You don't want your reader to be lost or confused. So fill in any holes for the reader while being economical. In terms of tone, you want to be honest and straightforward rather than melodramatic. We'll look at a couple of examples of this in a minute. So just think about whether you'd be comfortable reading it aloud to an admissions officer. Um, that would give you a pretty good sense of how it comes across socially to your reader. Um, then I'm sure you've had plenty of education on the active versus passive voice. Um, but you, in general, want to present from the point of view of your experienced self. So start sentences with I. So, like, I developed skills by participating in after school programs. Um, then, in terms of structure, you're going to have a clear beginning, middle, and end. So with an overview, transition statements, and connecting the dots, and giving yourself time to reflect. That's one of the great advantages of being a writer is you get to tell your own story and tell people what it means to you. So that reflection piece, don't overlook that. Yeah, so the active voice is considered better. Thanks for that question. Um, when you're in passive voice, people can be left to wonder who's actually responsible or who actually experienced this. Um, so, for example, participating in after school programs allowed me to develop skills, just um, tempers the agency that you present if you say it in active voice, where you say, I developed skills. Um, let's see, moving on. This is not a request to reinterpret facts. So if you find yourself saying something along the lines of like, if I hadn't had to work so hard, my grades would have been better. Um, you want to present in the positive, like these are the facts of what I worked myself through. Um, and um, and you also don't want to throw in factors that were in your control, right? So if the story is that you took too many classes or you overloaded yourself with experiential um, things, or that's not the kind of self-inflicted injury that you want to bring up in the personal statement. So again, it should be more about context than about your choices. Further about the content, do stick to the relevant facts, right? So you might say something like, due to my parents' status as undocumented immigrants, they struggle to find work. As a US citizen, I began working 40 hours a week in high school because I was able to find higher paid jobs, right? So keeping to the relevant facts. And tell your committee about the effects of those circumstances. I was forced to miss school to pick up extra shifts, which negatively impacted my grades. So show them the cause and effect of the circumstances. And then, as I was saying about agency, um, let them know how you tackled these really challenging situations. Like, I talked to my teachers to arrange ways to make up for missed classes, or I researched college scholarships designed for disadvantaged students. Let We know that you have gotten yourself to the point of being ready to apply for professional school. We know that you had a very active role in helping that happen. So show your agency. And again, that thing that I was saying about what happened back then that got you to now is a great predictor of how you'll perform in their program, right? Having the agency to get yourself to this point bodes well for you having the agency to thrive in these professional programs. And then again, another point that I've made before, but I just want to underline, reflection is really important. It's you getting to say, why are you telling this story? So you can reflect something like, I've learned to make the most of my time through utilizing organizational skills and anticipating and preparing for difficulties in advance. So if that is a skill that's built in on the ground floor for you because of what you've been through, just state that right out clearly so that your committee understands you. Here are some of the buzzwords that you can use that describe a really complex experience in just a few short words that many people recognize. So first generation American, first generation college student, English was a second language, low income or parental careers, low parent education, single parent, large household, worked since a young age to support family, low performing high school, lack of resources, neighborhood violence, high teen pregnancy in the community, or unique hardships.
A quick question,
Yes, hop right in there.
more personal to my own life, but so I'm going through a career change, and of course I quit my other job, and so I hadn't been working that for a while, would it be appropriate to talk about hardships because of that, or is that just kind of because I put it on myself, it's not applicable?
Well, everybody's going to have to be supported somehow, right? And so um, let them know what was the context, right? Why did you make the choice to leave that job? If there was something going on in the context that pulled you towards that decision, then that'll be pretty easy for your committee to understand.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Okay, let's look at some samples. So one of the maxims in writing a personal statement is to avoid starting with bang. So gunshots, helicopters flying overhead. Felt scared for my life and my family as another drive-by shooting occurred in my neighborhood. Would this war ever end? Would another life be taken? I was only 5 years old and learned quickly at a young age that this needed to change. I needed to get out of this cycle of poverty and violence that plagued my community. Although no one else in my neighborhood made it past high school, I persevered. So there's a lot to like here, if we go strengths based. Um, Anybody want to share in the chat some of the objective measures that we've talked about that this writer is sharing? Go back a couple slides and put that list up again for us. Anybody spotting anything on this list that the writer is using, is referring to? Right. Yeah, neighborhood violence. Um, So they're going in the right direction, but they're using quite a lot of their space on sense details. This startling gunshots, the helicopters, they're not wrong, and I'm sure they did experience that, and I'm sure that they did feel scared. Um, and but for the purpose of this statement, we want to stick close to the measures that the committee can recognize without without adding uh, this much sense detail. Okay, here's another one. Getting better. My parents are immigrants. I learned English as a second language. My parents divorced when I was in high school. I was the first to go to college in my family. I worked 2 jobs throughout college. I I also sent money home. College was harder for me than for my classmates. Becoming a doctor will allow me to help my family. So again, they're on the right track. What are some of the measures of disadvantage that admissions committee might be looking for in this essay, might be finding relevant in this essay? So first generation American, single parent household, good. Worked to support the family, worked 2 jobs throughout college, right? Um, so they're on the right track, but they could borrow from some of the wording we shared earlier. This here, college was harder than for me than for my classmates. This is subjective. Um, and comparative statements like this are inherently tricky. Um, to the extent possible, try to point to objectively what you experienced without comparative statements. And then I'm absolutely sure that becoming a doctor will allow this person to help their family. And at the end of the day, all these professional schools are leading you to a profession that's a job. And I don't expect anyone here is doing this work for charity. Um, Still, in general, you want to point the attention of your committee towards your professional goals as a doctor rather than a personal goal, especially around income. All right, here we're getting better. So this applicant shares, my parents do not have education beyond the second grade and they do not speak English. Consequently, they've only been able to offer limited support for my educational pursuits. Both my parents were both farm laborers and they struggled to support our family on their wages. I began working to help support my family at age 12. Making it through college on my own was economically and emotionally tremendously difficult. I attended a high school that was known to be one of the lowest scoring on national exams, so is not very helpful in preparing students for college. By and large, I have struggled on my own to perform in school and to understand subject matter. So they're doing a good job here of telling us what the situation is. Think, does anybody have a suggestion of where this author could improve? Remember back here, we were talking about active voice and about showing your own agency. So let's go look at this sense of agency of what a student might have done to overcome the obstacles, how they overcame this. Um, and then I think I spotted an example of passive voice. Let's go look for that and see if we can find it. Let's see. I attended a high school that was known to be one of the lowest scoring on national exams, so it wasn't very helpful. Yeah, so it would be helpful to know what they did in this struggle. What resources did they find? I'm sure you've all experienced this, but when you got to Davis, there was a moment where you realized like what your strengths were and where your challenges were, and you've been busy here finding resources that um, help you remediate the areas that are a challenge for you. And that's only going to continue in professional school. That like um, seeing where your strengths and weaknesses measure up and using the institution to help you remediate where you need. So it'd be helpful to know from the student what they relied on, what resources they identified um, to get through this experience. All right, here's an even stronger version of the same thing. So, my parents don't have an education beyond second grade and they do not speak English. Let's compare this to the one immediately previous. I'll just let you read on your own. So here the author has added in, often I had to trade sleep for paid work or schoolwork. Needless to say, I had little time to participate in extracurricular activities. This is the kind of thing that's super helpful in giving context to the rest of your application. So if your rest of your application looked thin on extracurricular activities, but you understand yourself well enough to know why that happened, then share the background of how you got to presenting the strengths that you have, and knowing that the distance you traveled impacted the number of experiences you're able to show. Here we are. So I learned to ask for assistance, seeking out any and all resources and taking initiative in my own learning. So it's very similar to the one before, but just being a little bit more concrete um, about uh, about the impact on their preparation for professional school and how they got the support that they needed. All right. Any questions about the writing before I move on? All right. So the COVID statement has been a part of applications for a few years, and you'll still hear people refer to it. AMCAS will not have a COVID statement on the application in the 25-26 cycle. Um, but that doesn't mean it didn't impact you, right? So if you were, if you had some pandemic related impacts to your application, um, particular, you can be prepared to speak to that. Um, but it won't be formally part of your application. All right, this brings us into the finish. So I'd like to warmly invite you to our next app prep workshops. Coming up next Tuesday, we will have writing your secondary applications. Those are applications that you receive after you sent in your primary application, and it's a way of for schools to ask you to write a little bit more directly to their mission and your preparation for their school. Um, and then on the 22nd, which is also a Tuesday, I'll be presenting again about all of the little tests and assessments around ethics and fit for your schools that are out there and how to prepare for each of these. So we'd love to see you there. As soon as I stop recording, I'll put this link in the chat for you. But it's right on our HPA webpage under events, under App Prep program. You can find the dates for the next things up in our event series. And then finally, I'll be dropping this into the chat for you. The AAMC does a really superior job of speaking about the resource, of speaking about their own uh, application. So they really do want to level the playing field, and they want everybody to understand as well as possible what their application is all about, so that you have an even playing field from which to begin your application process. Really worth checking out these AAMC resources, including the one specifically about the topic that we discussed today. The AAMC also puts out an annual applicant guide. I checked a couple days ago, and the one for the 2025-26 cycle was not out yet. I imagine that that will come out around May 1st when the application opens. And then finally, here's the research that is behind the name change of calling this Other Impactful Experiences instead of Disadvantaged Statement. So if you want to read about how researchers dove into that topic and made a persuasive case for a change, here's the data. So I want to warmly invite you again to stay in touch with us. Following our newsletter is a great way to keep developing your pre-professional identity, knowing what we're up to. Here's where we are in all the ways: our physical location, our phone, our email, and our Instagram, all worth following, just like these little ducklings. All right, I'm going to stop the recording, but I'll stick around for a few minutes if you have individual questions, and then I'll pop these links into the chat for you as well. Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a great afternoon.